And now for the last training in this fashion, welcome. You may know me, you may not, but that doesn't really matter. But be advised, this channel will be recorded for the duration of the training. So if you don't wish to have your voice recorded, please mute your mic now and keep it muted until the end of the training. Otherwise, there will be some time for questions and interaction of our kinds. Then you can speak to me through the voice interface and get recorded. If you don't want to be recorded and wish to remain anonymous, you may use the training text chat to write out questions for me that I can answer. So keep in mind, I will not take any questions during these segments. Between them, I will answer questions that you've made. In the text chat, please use a hand emote at the start of your message so I know that it is a question. Otherwise, I may not be able to answer all your questions and I may miss some, depending on how much you chit-chat. But briefly, this interaction will give you some ideas to ponder. I will mention some skills, and for the people who've led quite a bit, this first part especially will be very simple. But this will function as a refresher for the other guys. This should provide some ideas that you haven't thought of, and if you have, good for you. So this training will be segmented as a brief introduction. We will talk about some mathematics, the basics of communication, and then we'll move on to the first part, which is essentially me talking about some tactics, basic things, a few interesting ideas by Zhang Zhu. Again, I'm not going to point him and say, "Oh, look, an Eastern philosopher, you should follow whatever he says." I would just say that, like the works of Diogenes, you should read them and ponder the wonderful ideas they have. Not, of course, follow them blindly. And in the second part, we will talk about leadership and some more involved stuff. And between the first part and second part, there will be a 10-minute break, so you can have a brief moment to collect your thoughts. But starting with the training, you will find in the training chat I've posted a PDF, a brief overview of the mathematics of warfare as relevant to balance side, and I would like you to open it and have a look. But at this very start of training, I'll want to squash a few notions that are common in planet side. Two of my pet gripes. You've heard this argument that it's a 50-50 battle, we should be winning. And, well, arguments such as, yes, we should easily win. Yes, clearly the foe must be crushed between us. But if you really think about the argument you're stating, clearly the foe will give whoever is your opponent will have to say an argument that clearly they should win. And a few days ago, I posed this quandary to Kari and asked why should you win? And he said, because we are superior. Are you really? Are you really? What in this specific instance makes you superior to your foe? This will be the main focus of today's little lecture. If you think about it and look at the base on the other side of the map and you see the interval of population and the percentages of the total population that two factions have, based on that, you essentially know nothing of the situation. Who is leading the effort on your side or on the enemy's side? What precisely, where precisely are they engaging the foe? In which buildings, in what positions are they fighting the enemy? And how are they engaging the foe? Are they dug in and fighting from entrenched positions, or are they running around like headless chickens and doing jack shit, or just standing in the spawn room doing nothing? And you don't know how skilled or trained they are because you only know the amount of population, not who specifically are there. And of course, we don't know what tactics and strategies the foe or our side are employing and how effective they are. So we know essentially nothing. And if you don't remember anything about this training today, and you probably won't in the next 10 years, you will forget everything about it. Keep in mind that information is the key, and pre-built models will set you free. And I endure to argue this point to you in depth through this whole lecture. But yes, the public doesn't understand mathematics, and mathematics is a very good tool to analyze situations and form models and think about truly what is actually happening. And this, well, since it is the corona pandemic is happening at the moment, you will find some interesting mathematics about modeling the spread of the virus and infection rates and curing rates and that sort of thing. But generally, people have a very poor intuition when it comes to mathematical issues. One of the key problems that I find people always, well, with which people use wrong intuition is the Monty Hall problem. We will not discuss it here, but if you want to read about it, you will find many tools in the net to find out how probability actually works. And of course, there are people with insight that you or I don't possess, and only through learning and applying that learning, you will learn more. So today is just a brief thing, and what you do afterwards is much more important than whatever I scribble and babble on today. But yes, on my part, PlanetSide is a painful game because every single situation pretty much seems like the Battle of Cannae or the Battle of Stalingrad all over and over again, because people don't think about what they should be doing and just throw people at each other. And I, for one, think that should not be happening. But yes, we will move on to mathematics. So please open your PDF and we will go through a simple simulation. This simulation is based upon Lanchester's laws and some similar notions, which describe the simple ideas of warfare. If you're familiar with wargaming, essentially this is, or rather the 19th century equivalent of wargaming is where Lanchester's laws developed. But yes, in this first simulation, a strategic simulation, we will have 3 factions, and they have a population of 1002. That is simply because we want to have integers, and we split their populations equally, and again, equally to such a fashion that all factions are fighting each other with equal population in the battle. And one by one, we will move in this simulation of ours, populations from factions A and B to a battle with faction A. And here I will use balance of power, which I define as proportional force concentration, which is essentially the amount of deployed forces at a specific situation against another faction, as a means to examine the simulation. And I will also later use another way to try to display the situation to you. But if you scroll down and you arrive at the first figure, the green line will be the balance of power of B and C, again proportional force concentration, and as they are pulling away, the situation doesn't change in the battle proportionally. The population will move away, but essentially it will still be a stalemate of sorts. But as you can see, the red line, which is describing 3 different situations, because this is a proportional, all these situations converge into a single graph in our simple simulation, that with the movement of populations B and C against A, in all situations, A versus B, A versus C, and combined.
Can I get an invite, please? Do you have a squad open?
We have a squad open.
Okay, we won the alert, by the way. I
Wonderful.
probably saw that, yeah.
Hurry, you've been recorded. Your intrusion will be remembered by KOTV members to come.
What is the squad called?
KOTV training, sir.
Yes, would you kindly mute yourself? I will take questions between segments. Thank you. And at the moment, we are dealing with the briefing on the simple simulation. But yes, moving on to battle simulations. The previous one was a strategic one, which focused on a large population. Here we are going to examine two situations, a situation where there's equal population with two factions, and a situation where one faction has twice the population. And here we will make the arbitrary decision that each faction kills any faction that they're engaged at the rate of 5 times the population of the killing faction divided by 167. And that's just a proportional kill rate per population of the faction. Meaning as casualties mount, the ability to kill the foe is reduced. And here in the following graph, we can see that in the orange line, this is the double population situation, but beneath it, far below, we can note the situation with two equal populations. And clearly,
that you can participate in the training.
And clearly, these two factions are not actually in a stalemate, but they destroy each other utterly in their continued engagement. And meanwhile, in a case of twice the population, the faction C will be substantially undamaged while it has destroyed all the members of faction A. So, see how much of a difference the amount of populations, again, presuming that all the factions kill enemies at the set rate. Yes, we will combine these populations in the following page, and we will examine the combined effects of having three factions fighting each other and having them kill enemies at the set rate. And in the first graph, we will see the simulation of balance of power, again, proportional force concentration. And the green, in this case, when we have B and C in a situation that they won't battle each other, they won't kill each other, their proportional force concentration will remain the same. And in the red line, we have once again three different situations converge into a single function, essentially. And we note that the balance of power plummets as the members of faction A are slain, and B and C move their populations to fight faction A. And this, again, described very simply with the simulation, is one of the main reasons why battles and alerts in PlanetSide happen in such a manner. It's not actually a question of double teaming, which people always say. It's not intentional. It's a slight shift in population that cascades, because as you can see, the rate of change is not actually linear. It's proportional to a arithmetic series, to be precise. And again, below it, we can see another population graph, and we can see that faction A is completely annihilated. And in the orange line, we can see that both factions B and C remain substantially undamaged by this encounter. And of course, in PlanetSide, we have revive mechanics and respawn and other stuff. But in a battle scenario, even in a micro level, fighting in building on building, or in a base, or in a urban structure, or in a forest or similar situation, this simulation still gives you some ideas what's happening. Because imagine that when someone is down, they are unable to affect the battle. And secondly, if they're being revived, that will mean that someone else will have to help them up. They are out of the battle for the time being. And if they respawn, they will need to use time to travel to the battle and once again engage the enemy. Again, another point for 50-50 population. We don't know if how many of the people involved are engaged with the enemy. we have no information. Thus, it's rather unlikely that you will win such an engagement. It's up in the air because we know essentially nothing. And as for the kill rate, in these simulations, I presumed that the kill rate is the same for all factions. But if we imply stratagems, tactics, or we train people, we will increase the kill rate and become more effective and start destroying the enemy faster than they can destroy our forces, and thus succeed and win battles. Of course, then this must be done at a larger rate, like a larger scale. It has to be everyone, because if we break the simulation down to a situation where there's a very effective super squad and a lot of plebs against a well-balanced force, things will still turn out badly for the over-specialized force with just a limited number of helpers. It's just a question of numbers and time. And you may wish to note that in the battle simulation, I used time as the axis, but I combined the reinforcing and the battle's time step in this combined simulation. And in addendum, we will see 2 more graphs, and these are the same graphs we saw before, but in this case, I included the possibility that the foe fight each other, and whoever dies will not rejoin the battle. But still, we can see that the faction A is still screwed and will be utterly destroyed, while factions B and C still survive with quite a bit of force. And then to my second pet gripe, here we're hearing all the time this about, oh, they have overpopulation. 10% overpopulation. Oh, that's horrible. In the last page you will find a brief map situation. We will examine a situation where there's 48 troopers in a battle. The percentage of the total population is 55%. And we know that the other faction's population is 45%. And with simple math, because again, population is proportional. Sorry, population A divided by the percentage of total population of A is proportional or equivalent to population B divided by percentage of the population B of the total population. We will easily find that, oh yes, the population B is actually 39 troops. And the difference is 9 troops. So it's the 10% difference is not horrible in total population, because it's a difference of 9 troops. It's less than a squad. And the difference in percent of population B is so 9 people of population B is 22% and plus, and 18% for population A. So note that the difference is not actually 10%. It's 9 people, and the difference is not actually staggering. If you wish to analyze other situations, you can use this simple math framework, or if you want, I can give you the code for the simulation in Python. But moving on for the last little bit in the introductions before we get to whatever questions you may have, we will briefly talk about communication, specifically radio communication. It doesn't apply that well in Discord, but generally in a military fashion, or also in air traffic control, you will find that people who communicate to others, they send their radio messages starting with receiver and sender. So essentially me saying that, hey Curry, this is Malyaska, and I say my thing. So it's, hey you, this is me. Movies and other media get this horribly wrong, but the point is that if you want to say something to someone, point at the person you want to receive you, and then identify yourself, not the other way around. So the people on the other side will listen, oh, hey, that's me. Maybe I should listen what this person says. It's that simple. And secondly, when you speak in a radio communication or any communication over VoIP, be compact. Don't say or hold on a minute, I should have. And you can rejoin the conversation. This is a great way to keep the traffic to a minimum and ensure that the airways are not clogged. And since we will be giving orders through VoIP, when you give orders, make them clear and distinct. Identify who, where, when, and how. Make sure that you include all the information you need to communicate to people, but don't tell them stuff that they don't need to know. Don't tell your life story. And don't bow them with information that they can't use. Think about what they should know and tell that. And whenever you need something done, don't ask someone to do something. Ask a specific person to do something. Name them and point them out, you will get much better results. And one last thing in the introduction. You will find out these situations in game and in our parts of your life where someone has to do something or know something. And in this case, in the outfit and in other organizations, we follow the chain of command and we link files essentially. We move from trooper to squad leader to platoon leader to commander. Don't bypass this chain of command. This is here for a reason. The people higher up on that chain have a lot more to think about. So if you need to communicate something, find the person who can do something about this problem. Think about, can you solve this problem yourself? And should someone else know about it? Can someone else solve your problem for you? And should they do so right now? Because if it's not important right now, you can always do it later. And now we will move on for questions. You can state them now in the verbally if you wish to be recorded, or write them out in the training chat.
How it's going, Monliaska?
Very well. Any questions related to training? Anything about mathematics or communication? Oh, and by the way, communication is very vital. You will find out in life that if you communicate properly, most problems will solve themselves.
That's true. No question there.
We are all in one Discord room. How do we follow the communication row?
Well, communication usually has to go to the force commander or your platoon leader. Right now we're mostly running run platoons, so I think we can all be in a Discord. As soon as we start having more platoons, we'll have to split it up, probably over teams.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
think about, you can do it like if you have on a squad level, you're leading a squad or you are in a squad. First communicate within your squad chat in game. Then move to Discord, and if you want to talk to a specific person, another squad leader or platoon leader,
Yeah.
don't use platoon chat, because if you are discussing orders, keep it private so that you don't confuse all the people hearing the platoon chat.
Thanks. That was pretty useful.
Like he said, keep it as compact as possible. People, squad and platoon leaders, force commanders are usually quite busy on the battlefield. So just give necessary information.
How
As I
big
call-
of a TeamSpeak server we need, Kari?
We have one.
Essentially,
Google TeamSpeak.
it's keep it simple, stupid. And speaking of keeping it simple and stupid, we will move on to a few demonstrations in the in-game. So join me near the L building and we will proceed with a simple demonstration. I will go through breaching, positioning, and talk about boxing in or cordon off. The thing I will demonstrate to you will be a slightly modified version within the, well, limitations of PlanetSide, and we are going to, or rather, I will briefly show you breaching through marine core doctrine. So again, this will not directly apply to PlanetSide, but I want you to understand the intent and the little things we do and why we do it when we breach. And you may want to be inside for this. And I will just go through the motions. I will say the things that Marines will generally say, but again, this is not necessary in PlanetSide or in many other things. But essentially, I will first off note, oh yes, we have a situation where I need to enter a building occupied by the enemy. I will move to the side of the building. I will initiate a stack, and going through this in a Marine fashion. Stack on 1. Behind me, people will line up. They will reply 2 set, 3 set, 4 set, all set. And I will proceed by saying stand by the breach, prep flash. Number 2 will move slightly to the right and prepare a flash grenade. He will say flashbang ready or set. And then we will proceed with the actual breach. And this is a very simple breach that I'm going to do now by myself. This is Marine Corps stuff, and it is idiot-proof. This way of breaching can be explained with 3 sentences. And I would recommend that when you teach our people in PlanetSide with, let's say, people of limited understanding of military doctrine and other things, to focus on this type of breaching, because it's easy to explain. There's a lot of techniques that you can apply, but I want to demonstrate this one. And in the rest of the training, if I don't mention something specific or some specific instance, that's just because we have time limitations. And I can't go through all the 100 things, because this should be about 2 hours, maximum 3 hours total, combined for part 1 and part 2. So, describing this breaching in 3 sentences. You stack up and split like a zipper as you breach, left and right along the walls. You follow the wall, securing the room until you reach the next threat threshold, where you stack up for another breach. Rinse and repeat. It is that simple. So, we've gone through the thing. All people are set, nade is ready, and I will proceed. So, breaching. 5, I will open the door if there was one. 4, the number 2 throws a grenade in. 3, 2 grenade explodes. 1, breach. And I will move in. As the first one, I will move left. I will go in, immediately check the corner, check through the room, move to the corner, and move to this position. Here, unfortunately, there's a terminal away, but technically I should be here if there was no terminal. Now, I will stop here and I will not continue on, because we've reached a threat threshold. If I move past this point, I will expose myself to fire coming from an unknown direction, which we are not covering. So I will stay here and I will not move here, because if I move here, I will be in a choke point, in a corridor. I will limit our potential fire, because I will block line of sight for people who are on the other side of the room. And I will be shot to hell by anyone who's there. So I will stand here. And on the other side, I will do what the second person does. I will go outside, stay here. Second person, he will move to the right. He will be following this wall. He will check the corners, keep moving, secure the room, and he will stop right here. We've arrived at another threat threshold. Here I'm covering the staircase. If I move any further, I can't be seen from the staircase, and now I really saw that. And now we can see the room. The third person will be with the first person on the other side, and the fourth person will be behind me. Together we can see the whole room, we can shoot targets, and we can clear it. And in real life, breaching normally just takes 4 people because of danger situations like mines, grenades, and other things. But in PlanetSide, you will see 6 or 8 people doing the same breach. And a thing about grenades before I proceed to another demonstration. On the other side of the room, grenades in PlanetSide are shit. In real life, grenades will have an incapacitation range, so killing or wounding in a fashion to force a person to, well, essentially not fight, or 15 to 20 meters. So within 15 to 20 meters, you will be injured and you will be out of the fight because you will be holding your guns together or you'll be dead. In PlanetSide, the range of the grenade to incapacitate, in other words, kill someone, is essentially 1 meter. So they are utterly useless. If you are breaching, use Krongs and flashbangs. They are still less useful than the real-life counterparts, but still they are way more useful than a weapon that does nothing. Now, I said rinse and repeat. We will move back to the first person, number 1 and number 3. We have another situation where we have a breach, we have an unknown threat in this room, and we are going to proceed and secure it. We will repeat the procedure. So 1 set, 2 set, prep flash prepped, and 5, I will open if there was a door. 4, he will throw in the grenade. 3, 2, it explodes. 1, and we will breach. As the first one, I will move left. I will proceed forward, and I will end right here. I've arrived at another threshold. I cannot move any further without exposing myself to fire, but from this position, I can cover the doorway and the room for the rest. And on the right side, the third guy will move here. He will immediately check the corner, keep moving. Here he's exposing himself to that door, but he will go to the corner. And from here, we can control the room. If there was no door here, I would keep moving, checking corners, checking behind cover, moving all the way to the next threshold. And here we can cover the whole room. Very simple. Again, 3 sentences. Very simple demonstration. Now we'll move upstairs for a brief demonstration about setting up defenses and how to position people.
What's it?
Again,
Sorry,
it bears noting that in real life we will not clear balconies or roofs because we can be exposed to outside fire. In PlanetSide it might actually be necessary, but still. And if there were windows, again in real life situations we would crouch under the windows, but some numbnuts in PlanetSide decided to make the windows so small that your head can be seen. Like there's 40 centimeters from the floor to the start of the window. So in these cases, move past the windows as quickly as you can. But yes, setting up defenses. I've placed 2 barriers. So if we were to defend this room, in PlanetSide there's such things as light assaults, which are not present in, well, of course, real life situations. So in here, if this was a real situation, we would only cover the stairs, essentially. But in this case, we would set 2 people to defend the stairs, 1 here, and now 1 here, and mayhaps a 3rd here, or a 3rd person here. And the same situation on the other side. 1 person here, another person here, and a 3rd person here or next to the barrier, depending on where they can see the enemy, or rather seeing the positions of the enemy, where they're coming from. Again, because PlanetSide is PlanetSide, and we know, unfortunately, that if someone moves out of cover, you will render first to them. Like they will see people because the movement will be delayed. But still, if you are not standing, if you're standing in cover waiting for someone to show up, you will have some time to react. And again, this is not applied in this fashion, but there's a concept called RTR, return fire, take cover, return more accurate fire. This is commonly done as people bounce or advance through open fields or through, and essentially through everywhere, anywhere. But the point being that if you see a target and you are engaged, first return fire, shoot at him, get to cover, break line of sight, then calmly reposition yourself and return accurate fire. It has some uses in planet side. But yeah, continuing on, in this situation, we will also need a person to cover the stairs, the windows, the other staircase, another window, and then the balcony with probably 2 people. And you notice that that's not actually 12 people. So if you have spares, they can free roam or you can use them to reinforce a set situation. And let's move on to a briefing. I said return fire, get outside.
I would have a question here for this room specifically.
Sure, why not? Let's break the format. All right, go ahead, Curry. You rebel.
Okay. Sorry about that. What's your experience in setting up turrets, especially on the first level, the engineer turrets, and how would you rate them generally?
The barriers are much superior because they cover more space. The thing is that you should not be in a turret when you are. Like if you have a barrier and a turret, that's wonderful. You can suppress and you can cover space. But the issue with the engineer turrets is that it has limited protection. It's a very tall and narrow object, so you will be shot through it.
I mean the automatic turret.
And it's very weak. The issue is that it has targeting difficulties. It will check around itself and up. It doesn't check down effectively.
How would you cover the roof if it's dangerous to go up and you constantly have light assaults coming
from
through
inside? Of course, like we will not stay in the roof because we'll be exposed once again to outside fire. We will stay inside. We will wait the enemy to come to us and come to the situation which we control and from which we can murder them.
Okay. Thanks.
It's very simple. All right, now let's go to the outside. I mentioned return fire, take cover, return accurate fire. There's another thing that I want you to keep in mind. Again, wonderful things to learn when you mingle with the Marine Corps guys. This being a little phrase when you are moving from cover to cover. Generally, this is a situation where you have a fire team who's covering and people are advancing one by one forward. They are pinning enemies with fire, essentially. So they push forward. In their mind, you should be repeating, and Marines repeat. Julio, can you refresh my Sunday? Thank you. But yeah, in their mind, they repeat this phrase, I'm up, he sees me, I'm down. Keep this in mind when you're moving through the rain. Keep this phrase in mind. It is about 2 seconds, 2 to 3 seconds. If you can't say that phrase and you are moving through the rain, you are exposing yourself. An example. I'm moving from this space to over there. Like I'm up, he sees me, I'm down. I'm almost there, but I still expose myself to fire. If the enemy is over there, it's much better for me to move through cover to this location. And then I'm up, he sees me, I'm down. I'm in cover and I've minimized my time exposed. And again, never cross roads, because have a look at this. Like I'll start here and I'll try to cross the road. I'm up, he sees me, I'm down. I'm up, he sees me, I'm down. I'm up, He sees me, I'm down, I'm up. I should be 3 times dead because I ran through open field. If anyone is over there in those towers and has eyes on this road, he has plenty of time to see me and shoot me. So never move across open ground. When you move through terrain, plan your advance ahead of time and relay that to people under you or to whomever you are fighting with. Now we will have an imaginary situation. All right, we will start from this building. Is it good? Yeah. All right. You'll start from this building. You should not actually do this in this specific pace, but imagine this as a scenario. Our goal here is to start from this location and move to the sealed generator building. We could be munchkins, muppets, and run to our devs and just take the shortest route and run into the generator and fight there, do our thing, but eventually we'll be slaughtered. If you want to do this well, we need to secure the surroundings. We need to cordon off that building and we need to create a perimeter where we can defend. In a similar situation to breaching, breaching should be just a few guys. We need guys to secure the surroundings and cut off enemy reinforcements. So if we start right here, let's identify probable threats coming from southwest. We will ignore northeast for the time being. So if we start here, we have an unknown building right here to southeast. We have an unknown building to northwest. And if we have a look around, we can see that on the other side of this area, there's a low ground and a high ground, and there's another building on the other side. If we want to secure the generator and ensure that it's held, and this is more for Void Guardians and tactical squads, we need to first secure that building, like do a breach, stack up, mob through it, see that there's no surprises. Again, you can split teams to do this individually and do it faster. And then we need to check this building. And below you notice that there's open ground. We are going to move through this building, keep breaching, fighting through it. We will clear out this area, because notice here, if we were running straight down the stairs, we could have an enemy force here and they would have wonderful sidelines on our approach and we would get slaughtered. But now that we've cleared the building, we can move forward. And in this case, because there might be some people above us, we can send people through here or use light assaults. That will be slightly more advanced of a tactic. Move up and clear them. But now that we control the area, and if we leave some people to cover those locations that we've cleared around this specific objective we need to defend, we can go in, overload it, do our thing. In a similar fashion, you've noticed that a lot of people want to always fight on points on planet side. And it's fight on the point, defend the point. No. Sometimes, especially in Inda, Alatun Broadcast Hub, it's more useful if you clear the surroundings of the point, then take the point, and then from locations surrounding the point, defend it. Sometimes holding the point itself may not be that useful, because if you own that single point, you are attacked, you are surrounded, you will be annihilated. But if you deploy in depth and you take important locations around you, you will have first time to react, you will have people and able to tell you that things are happening, they will communicate this information, people will make decisions, they will create a plan, they will respond, and then we can let the enemy push through, we can collapse on them, and we can destroy them. And the main thing about leading is that you are not managers. You are not there to enforce status quo. You are not herders. You need to think, you need to plan, you need to create.
Yep. So take your time when you are at the base that you don't know, the fight is over. walk through the buildings, check the layout. It's a problem that I've often encountering since I came back, that I don't know the bases anymore. So I often ask people where to deploy, which buildings to hold. If the A building is in a small shitty room, you don't want to deploy your forces there because they'll surround you and just granite you out. So the more you know the area and the buildings, the better squad and platoon leader you are. Basically, the more experienced you are. So if you want to be really good at this, need to know the bases, or at least need to know the important buildings and PlanetSide.
Well, that's partially true, but from a real life perspective, you can know the layout of every single building on planet Earth, which means that you need to create a plan that you can follow, which you can implement, and you can adapt to every single situation. All right, we will end the in-game demonstrations here, but and we will continue on with the training through voice communication only. But yeah, here another thing that I want you to keep in mind is that when we are doing anything in life or in a military scenario or here on a pseudo game thingy, acting and failing is always better than not acting. If you are apathetic and you don't do something about the developing situation, you will eventually be overcome by it because you have no plan to react when situation spirals out of control. So create a plan and act. And if you act and fail, that's fine. People fail all the time, but learn from those failings. And in PlanetSide, PlanetSide is fast and dumb. It's not slow and methodical. So the stuff I've talked about today will only apply partially. But keep in mind that you want to keep your people engaged. Players will get bored and their morale will suffer because of it. If they get screwed by a situation, or if you stand around not acting, they will lose faith and they will collapse. But yes, leaders create plans to unique situations, and with these plans they try to address challenges and create tasks for other people to manage. So leaders learn from failure and consider their failures in their new future plans. And managers, and I'm going to use managers as defined as someone who uses status quo, that maintains status quo. A manager, a person who isn't creative when they lead. They take a pre-self plan, wonder why he failed when implementing it, and he learns very little and gains little insight from using a pre-self idea that they have not fully understood. So as you leave this training and you start playing or doing anything in real life, think about what you are doing, relearn, apply what you've learned. It's very important to use information in new and creative ways so you can master it. And yes, as you make plans, enemies make plans. Not all plans happen, like something may change and you can change the way you go about things. And this is, you may notice the thing I use in Discord and which I've used in TS, but this is one of my favorite phrases I've come across. We must have a plan so that we know what we are deviating from. In other words, we must have intent. We must know what should be done. Then when the situation changes, we can adapt and we don't have to create a whole new plan. We can just make mild changes and push forward. And talking about tactics, there's really no difference between offensive and defensive tactics. The main thing is a tactic will become offensive or defensive, depending on how you utilize it in a situation. So examples of tactics, pre-positioning defensive sunderers on a base which is about to be attacked. Setting up anti-ammo positions, for example, in Jacob's Crossing north of the base. Creating entrenched positions. Creating a harasser or Valkyrie raiding force which disrupts the movement of enemies or destroys their thunderers, for example. Or you fully withdraw to another situation, prepare, or you fight a sustained battle. I've labeled these as defensive tactics, but all of them can be used in small scenarios than on a battle level. They can be used in a building level, and they can be employed offensively because you can move in, take a position within enemy territory, and you can entrench your position and hold it. That's offensive. You are within the enemy lines and you're disrupting them. As long as you can force them to come to you, that is a offensive tactic. In a similar fashion, offensive tactics, you can use Valkyries for raiding, deploying forces, striking at vulnerabilities. You can flank, you can preposition Sounders when you're attacking as well. But again, same ideas you can use when defending. And when you do, you will be surprised what might happen. But yeah, we will talk about this more in the second part. But for the other guys, keep in mind how sustainable your deployment is. Do you have enough defendable Thunderers in optimal locations when you're attacking a base, or do you have poor Thunderers or not enough Thunderers? Or have you lost the key piece of the terrain and have you lost momentum? And when you are pulling out and withdrawing, ensure that you don't lose cohesion. Be clear with your withdrawal order, and when you tell people to withdraw, have a plan ready. Tell people, this is the plan, we will follow it. If you just tell them randomly to redeploy to the warp gate, redeploy to this base, come on, they will lose cohesion, they cannot follow you. Keep a well thought out. Think before you say anything, first off. A well thought out and functional plan that people can follow. Give them that, and people will start to coalesce around you because they understand what's happening. And we can avoid lone wolves. And if you react to enemy plans, you're always playing catch up. You want to force your enemy to react to you, because if you can do that, you can dictate the flow of a battle. You can dictate the conditions, and you can use your plans effectively against the enemy forces. Again, very simple ideas from the old master himself. Avoid the enemy where he's strong, strike where he is weak. Find faults in their defenses. Find things you can exploit. Keep regrouping to maintain cohesion. The best thing you can do in PlanetSide as a squad leader is to manage an effective squad. Keep them together, keep them cohesion, not cohesive as they're in the same base. Keep them cohesive on a squad level, that they fight as a group, because if you can do that, you will have a much more effective squad. And if you plan to say in the comments or in the question section that, oh no, Mal, we can't do that, that's organized squad play, bullshit. KOTV was at its best when we had platoons with squads that ran perfectly, that worked together, moved as a unit. Because then we can employ ideas which I will go into much further in the next part. And if quick thing before you can ask a question, if you were around when I was running ops, think about what I was doing. I tried to maintain advantage of the advantage in every situation. I went to battles which could be fought. I used any flaws of the enemy to deploy us in an effective manner and destroyed them in a cohesive manner, in a plan which I changed often, but when I changed it, I was clear and I kept repeating it so that you understood it and you could follow it.
Do you want to run an ops again? I would love to see you leading. Never seen that before.
Mayhaps. And hold initiative, hold your plans. Try to maintain the advantage. If you can keep the advantage on your side, you will demoralize the enemy.
Definitely.
And then the effectiveness will suffer and you will become more powerful. To quote a certain, well, you know. Again, be creative, and if you can implement your tactics and strategies and share them at will, you will find that the battles will be yours. And now I will end the first part we have fought, and we are barely past an hour. Well done.
Oh, thank you for the
Well done,
training.
me. Yes.
Would like to add some comments there. Well, after
Yes,
you're done.
after
you're
this
done.
thing. And after the first part, there will be a 10-minute break, and after that, we will have the second part with the mains. But yes. Here's a link to a certain book which you can find online. I would recommend that you would read this. Again, it's not. It has some wonderful ideas. Find a version like this with commentary, because Chinese language is very different and they express ideas very differently than Westerners. But I will
Awesome.
go in. I will go through in detail the ideas in chapters 10 and 9. Just briefly go through them, because these ideas I want you to think about as you play as a squad leader. Just a moment. So, 6 types of terrain. First type is accessible ground. This is ground which can freely be traversed by both sides. And this is any route or opportunity that is available for the enemy can be used by you or your foe as well. So imagine most of the map on planet side. All of that is accessible. People can go through it and they cannot be stopped. The second type is entangling ground. Entangling ground is ground which can be abandoned, but it's hard to reoccupy. Again, these fortifications, hills, and defensive locations. Places which you should mayhaps not abandon. In some cases, you might need to abandon, but keep this in mind. Like this is an idea that will make it slightly more simple to plan your stuff in planet side. Third type of terrain, temporizing ground. Ground on which neither side will gain the advantage by moving first. So this is essentially like First World War, trench warfare, or two rival forces having a very strong position. Whomever moves first will be crushed and destroyed. This is a situation where patience is important. So imagine like rushing to the A point and abandoning defensive ground, or rushing to a spawn room in a tech plant and having someone back up at the point behind you. Mayhaps you shouldn't rush to the spawn room. Mayhaps you should contain your bloodlust. Fourth type of terrain, narrow passes. Again, similar fashion to choke points. It's ground which you should occupy with strong garrison if available, and wait for the enemy to walk to your pre-prepared kill zone. Do not be fooled and enter such ground yourself. If the enemy is already there, you may not wish to attack. Go around if you can. Again, the idea of facing your opponent in a control fashion. If you can control it, wonderful. If the enemy controls it, don't even try. Find another way. Fifth type, precipitous heights. If you arrive first, occupy the superior defensive position, higher ground or other ground which you can from which you can control a wide area around you, and wait for the enemy and wait for your enemy to come to you, and then you can dictate the course of your battle. If the enemy is already in the position and waiting for you, don't fight against them. Move around them or employ trickery or stratagems or surprise to take their position from them. Sixth type of ground, positions at great distance from the enemy. And this is very important in planet side. Like provoking battles will be difficult and they will be in your disadvantage. If the enemies are far away and you are drawing their attention to you, you will cause the situation which we went through in the mathematics simulation, where you draw population to you and you will be fucked. If you should not fight at such a far distance and call the enemy to you, don't. Especially if they have a variety of options that they can use against you. And moving on to summary of chapter 11 about the 9 situations. Again, Ideas. These are wonderful ideas. Think of them. So, first of 9 situations, dispersive ground. If you are within your own territory, you are essentially in a facile ground. In dispersive ground. If you are in dispersive ground, don't fight. Don't fight within your own borders. Don't fight lone stragglers, and don't fight within your faction. Diplomacy is important. How much you may dislike certain people, but don't fight them. Be calm, collected, and work through it. Don't fight with them. If you fight within your own territory, there you will be fucked. It will draw your attention and your resources and your time, which you can't be then use against the enemy, and you will lose. Second, facile ground. When you have penetrated into hostile territory, but not at a great depth, you are on facile ground. On facile ground, hold not. So when you are moving from base to base, do not lose momentum. Do not stop in between moving those between those bases. Initial fighting will be easy, but it will grow difficult as you push further into enemy territory. Don't be bogged down as you move, because then you will be isolated and destroyed, which we will talk about in a moment. Third, contentious ground. Ground which provides either side a great advantage, again similar to precipitous heights. If you possess it, hold on. But yeah, if you possess the ground, you are on contagious ground. Don't attack contentious ground occupied by enemy without strategy. Don't attack it recklessly, and don't attack out of it recklessly. Don't allow the enemy to lure you away from such a important place. And in planetside terms, such contentious ground as bases are or were Nanite Analysis, Split Peak, West Bastion. Again, ideas come into play. And now we will talk about my favorite one, which is 4, open ground. Ground on which either side can move freely is open ground. On open, don't try to block the passage of your enemy. Again, if you're familiar with the Battle of Cannae, where Romans pushed into Hannibal's line and they were collapsed around and they were simply destroyed. In a similar fashion, be careful when you're fighting in open area on planet side. This is why base construction doesn't work in open fields, because they will be simply surrounded and destroyed. But if you have an enemy moving towards you, you can maneuver your force, micro them effectively around them, surround them, and destroy them. That's the benefit of open ground. If you can limit the movement of your enemy, then you can surround and destroy them. And ground of intersecting highways. Ground which, when held, allows you to control your surroundings as the roads converge. On ground of intersecting highways, join forces with your allies. Essentially in planetside, think of it as the lattice system and limit open lanes. If you have multiple lanes, you will enemies attacking you from multiple directions. If you control a intersection where they converge, and as you move it and take it, the forces from 2 different lanes will converge and regroup as a single force. There's a bit more to that one, but it doesn't matter in the context of planetside. And 6th, almost done, serious ground. When an army has penetrated deeply into enemy territory, leaving occupied enemy fortifications behind, you are on serious ground. On serious ground, gather and plunder. So be cautious. If you find enemy territories close to their warp gate, don't attempt to stay behind their battle lines. Cause havoc, confusion, and withdraw. You may demoralize the enemy, or you can force them to withdraw their forces to the warp gate, or you may just anger them. Be careful. This is again one of those situations which will turn the population towards you, and it may cause you serious defeat. 7th, difficult ground. Mountains, forests, broken terrain, marshes, these are difficult ground. On difficult ground, march steadily through. If you're familiar with guerrilla warfare, ambushes, and some such, those are wonderfully employed in difficult ground. If you are moving through it, don't engage an enemy. Push through those forests or mountains. Don't fight the battle where the enemy has a prepositioned forces in a forest and they can see you, but you can't see them. If you stand around and fight, you may win, but you will be slowed. And sometimes that's the reason that ambushes are done. It's not to kill you, it's to inflict casualties and slow you down. 8th, hemmed in ground. Ground which can only be reached by narrow passes or from which you can only leave through difficult to traverse paths so that a small force can cross a larger force when their advantage in numbers is denied. This is hemmed in ground, and on in hemmed in ground, use stratagems. Because if you defend a hemmed in ground or attack it, use stratagems to multiply your advantage and negate the enemy's strengths. But be careful, be cautious, because a hemmed in ground might be a great place to defend, but you may be trapped in it. And if you are trapped, you can be seized upon and destroyed. 9th and final one, desperate ground. Ground on which you can only be saved from destruction by fighting without delay. This is desperate ground. On desperate ground, fight. So like I said before, inaction is bad, always act. If an action may result in a certain defeat, act. If inaction will always lead to defeat. Things may go terribly wrong, or you may succeed, but if you fail to act, you will face certain death. And you will be defeated. And that is the end of the first part, and now I will take your questions.
I have a question about moving on the open grounds. I get that we most likely shouldn't do it, but what about using smokes to cover ourselves when moving through one?
Good point. If you use smokes, then you want to smoke the line of sight where the enemy can see you. You never want to move through smoke yourself, because then you will be blind. You want to... Well, there's two types of ways to move through the terrain. You can either employ cover or concealment. Cover is physical objects between you and the enemy which will provide protection, and then they will hide your movements. And concealment is just a way to hide your movements, and smoke is that sort of thing. But when you employ it, you need to employ it properly. So yes, you can do it, but you need to employ it properly.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, if there's not anything else, then apprentices, you are done, you may leave. For the rest of us, we will take a 10-minute break, and then we will resume with the second part.
Okay.
Apprentices, aren't allowed to stay here?
It may be the case that what I will talk won't be helpful to you, because you haven't led.
Okay.
For
Like if
the
you have...
risk of not understanding or not being helpful, may we stay anyway?
Sure.
Because I have led in the past, I'm just not as confident in PlanetSide itself.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
You
So
may.
I
Or
would
you
like
go.
to add some things. First would be keep your squad motivated, which Malyaska was already talking about.
Curry.
Yeah.
This will be in the second part, along many other things, but yes.
All
every
right.
apprentices.
Okay. All right.
If you want to say something specifically for the apprentices, do so.
Keeping your squad motivated means not fighting lost fights. Especially not fights that are impossible to win. Ask your platoon leader or force commander why he makes specific decisions. There's usually a strategy behind or a reason why specific area is supposed to be held, which is usually connected to a certain terrain, like Malaska's talk. Generally make the areas that you're trying to hold depending on how good it is to hold, where you expect the forces, if you expect them in vehicles or as infantry. But a lot of this will come with experience. And make the sorry, I'm distracted by the shooting.
Make it fun. Above all, it should be fun.
Should be the first rule.
But yes,
The quality
from-
of your squad is gonna also vary a lot. When you lead public squads, you can have one day a full KOTV squad, which is usually quite responsive to a lot of randoms. Also, depending on the time of the day, the later it gets, usually the less responsive the people are. So sometimes you will have a shitty squad, so you need to make your orders as simple as possible and structure them in a way that even a baby could follow them, which I personally usually do. For example, when I want to move my squad, my platoon to a certain area, that I move them through waypoints. Or if you want to have a proper squad cohesion, your voice chat might not be working, you put a waypoint on the map, you keep changing it. It's also possible to draw on a map, I didn't try it yet. So there's a lot of options.
anything else?
No, I'm good.
Alright, then from this point forward, we will have a 10-minute break, so we will reconvene at 38. So, go have a pee, have a smoke, kiss your girlfriend, and mains and the other people interested, you will stay. You can stay.